And we are back, and again, you're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and again, you are watching us on the Community Access Channel. You'll see us tonight in the rotation, and we are streaming live, and we've got Ricky Evangelista here, who is the Commissioner of Licensing and Consumer Affairs, and we're trying to get him on almost on a regular basis. We skipped a week. However, he's back, and there is a lot going on. And then we've got the Director of Consumer Affairs, Mr. Tricoche. Tricoche.
Tú necesitas practicar su español, Señor Redfield.
Yeah. Commissioner, talk to me a little bit. Obviously, you got a lot on your mind. I see you got the ever-ready battery.
We're ready to go. We're ready to go.
Major issues, I did tell you I had to defend you a little bit, and sometimes our politicians get a little rambunctious, you know what I mean, particularly around election time. Now, I can say this, you can't, because eventually you'll end up having to go there in the legislature, and they'll say, well, why did you say this? Yeah, even. I'm immune from that. I give ulcers, I don't get them. But and it's a lack of understanding, particularly on this fuel issue. And of course, we're confusing it a little bit, not confusing it. The overriding big issue, again, is WAPA, which you have no jurisdiction over. And that has to do with the fuel escalator. And that is not in your ballpark. You're dealing with fuel for automobiles, whether it's diesel, whether it's high test or regular gas. Talk to me a little bit about your assessment of your progress and any clarification that you want to put on the record for either somebody as political or anybody out there that, again, is scratching their head trying to figure out why some of these stations are not responding as quickly as others.
Sure, and once again, good morning to your listening audience, the people who listen to Senator Holland Redfield.
Right.
Good morning to the diligent working staff of DLCA, St. Thomas, St. John, St. Croix, and to all the consumers of the United States Virgin Islands. Senator Redfield, you know, one thing that you just touched on, and I'm glad you did, because a call actually came in yesterday when I was on a different show about WAPA.
Right, sure.
We do not have jurisdiction over WAPA,
Sure.
and there's the Public Service Commission, and they're handling that. However, what we do have responsibility for is monitoring the fuel prices at the pump, the retail prices, as well as the wholesale prices that the consumers are seeing fluctuate on a daily basis.
Well, let me inject myself into this real quickly. How about propane gasoline, propane gas for your
Sure. You know, that question actually came up on, I believe it was yesterday's show or maybe on Friday.
Sure.
That's something that we're going to begin to look at.
Sure.
I'm going to be honest with you, that fell off the radar.
Right.
We are even asking the Gulf Oil, who supplies the fuel at Limetree,
Sure.
to start providing that to us. We have not been advertising what that rate is simply because we have not requested it. So the next time I come on, I'll be able to speak about propane. I use propane for my stove, and based on my recent and long-term memory, I believe my parents and now I have been paying the same price for a tank of propane forever. So propane distributors, they're far and few. There's, as to the best of my memory, there's only 2 or 3 in both districts.
Sure.
Get your receipts together, because we're coming to share with you the conversation that we've had with the retailers throughout the territory. We haven't gotten to everyone, but what I'd like to do is commend the wholesalers and retailers in the territory, Senator Redfield.
Sure.
We actually have began conversing with them. There's a team of us, Consumer Protection, Mr. Tricoche to my side, the legal team, Attorney O'Neill, and we go in and we actually examine what does it cost for them to do business, number one, and number two, what is a decent profit margin that will allow them to not only make money, but also is comfortable for the consumer. Because in the end,
let me be the devil's, but how dare you ask me that? Again, that's my own business, obviously. We're talking about this spread. One thing, again, that the senator, again, was talking to me about, and that was Kurt VLA, was, again, this thought about a spread law that there is going to be a determination if the legislature has the authority, which I don't know. You and I've got to discuss that, to be able to have some sort of legislation in place with reference to what is a reasonable profit for somebody to have. It can not only be gas stations, it can be propane, or it can be food.
It can even be food items. And you know, it's one of the things that we should consider is this is a capitalist society. So
Yes.
you may actually lose businesses that are catering to our community
Sure.
if in fact you start setting rates, because then
Sure.
you're telling them you've gone into business, you've made an investment, now we're going to tell you how long it's going to take to recoup that investment. But what's more important, Senator Redfield, is the Department of License and Consumer Affairs,
Sure.
with its current jurisdiction, has the ability to have these conversations, and we are currently having those conversations. The prices that you've seen recently dropping at
Sure,
the pump,
sure.
that just didn't happen overnight.
Of course.
The Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs actually started having these conversations
Right.
back in February. And I'm going to allow Director Tricoche, since he's consumer protection, and his team has actually been the one, he and Attorney O'Neill from the legal department, who have been having these conversations, to share with you. We are consumers too. You and I,
Sure.
we buy fuel, so we get the rack rate, the wholesale rate. We know what it costs to truck the fuel. Between St. Thomas, St. John District, and the St.
Right.
Croix District, St. Croix gets his fuel, for the most part, unless it's unavailable, from Gulf Oil that stores at Lime Tree.
Sure.
St. Thomas and St. John District gets their fuel out of Puerto Rico.
Correct.
I am making a public plea. Any entrepreneurs, you, Senator Redfield, if you're tired sitting
Right.
in that chair in front of me,
Right.
get a barge, get some ISO tanks, get a cab, and start transporting fuel from St. Croix to St. Thomas, St. John
Sure.
District, to give relief, because that's actually one of the factors that we realized is affecting the cost of fuel in the St. Thomas, St. John District.
Let me get into your legal mind on this, and of course you're a lawyer yourself. We're talking about, again, the situation instinctively. Let's say this legislature went ahead and started processing a bill like that. You would have to come in front of the legislature, and more than likely you would ask for some advice from the Attorney General regarding this. You'd be in an awkward position, because you'd in essence have to tell them, this is what I'd like you to do, but however, I don't think it would have the legal sufficiency you need. And all of a sudden, you would become the boogeyman again. You follow me? The
Correct.
real thing is to shame these people as
Correct.
much as we possibly can.
Correct.
To say that they're absolutely gouging this public and cut it out.
Correct. And Senator Redfield, for full public disclosure, and I'm going to allow Tricoche to speak
Certainly.
real quickly, in the next moment, is in having these conversations, there's a difference in ownership of these fuel stations. So public, let me educate you without revealing proprietary information.
Right.
There are owners of stations, and there's persons who lease these stations.
Correct.
The person who are leasing the stations, their leases are exorbitant for some.
Of course.
So to expect them to give away the store, no one, like I said again, no one goes into business to give away the store.
Right.
However, for those persons who own the stations and their cost of overhead is lower, please, people have been unemployed for 5 weeks now.
Right.
People have actually been laid off. Businesses have closed as a result of COVID-19. What we are seeking on behalf of the consumer is COVID-19 relief.
Sure.
And the other thing, Senator Redfield, is when we learn what the profit margin is necessary to operate, the public will not be upset, nor will the first branch of government, the legislature, if the cost of the rack goes up $2 and your operating margin is, say, 50 cents,
Right.
then we expect you to increase your price,
Right.
but when it gets reduced, we also expect you to reduce it. So this is one of the things I want people to
Why does
understand.
it seem that the reduction takes longer than it does for it to go up? Okay, really quick response when it's going up. Okay.
Real
Now,
quick answer.
Yeah.
The community is not applying the pressure, nor is the agency that's supposed to do that. And that's why we're here now having these honest conversations with these
But we're talking about
retailers.
pressure, and Tricoche probably can get into it
Yes,
as well.
please.
And I'll let him into this thing. Obviously, the pressure has to be put to bear, but these folks have got this thing so wired. And as you know, we had discussed, you got 3 brand new gas stations opening up.
Correct.
I did discuss that with Senator Kurt Violet. And of course, I said to him, you've got to put a moratorium, or particularly stop this now, because it is not reflective in the gas pricing.
Correct.
It is
And
not.
as you know, in the last legislature,
Right.
former Senator Sanis had a bill, and coincidentally or ironically, it was either preempted or it was blocked. So you figure out.
I can figure it out. It
So
was
where are the
blocked.
donations coming from?
Understand,
You know?
you got, and if I offend somebody out there, you got campaign donations.
There you
okay?
go.
And I am just telling you, this is a protected industry. And again, it's also related into food, because right now what is happening, it is both food and gasoline. These guys are operating with impunity.
And Senator Redfield, Tricoche will now share with you. Stay tuned. DLCA is not asleep, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, no,
the same conversation that we're having with the fuel retailers, we're also now having it with the grocery stores,
Sure.
retail as well as wholesale.
Well, I don't want them to think that you're naive, okay? There's some reason that somebody thinks you're naive. Now, if they think you're naive, they got a real education. You can also be a therapist. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we're going to do is
hand it over to Dr. Tricoche now, who's going to help
I'm going
us.
to hand it over to him, and as I tell you, I'm going to give everybody who's a gouger free advertising, because I'm going to name their names on my show, okay? And if I'm liable for that, well, so be it. Everybody wants me off the air anyway. Tricoche, go right ahead, sir.
Tricoche appreciates you.
Right.
And so do I.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hold on.
Senator.
It's a break. Now, we did not do this deliberately for you. I'm a Republican. I got to pay for this broadcast. We'll be back in a minute. We're on Caribbean Country, 93.5. All right, I thought you'd like that, Mr. Director, Mr. Commissioner of Licensing.
Stay home.
Stay home.
home.
In any event, Mr. Tricoche.
Tricoche.
Right, Tricoche. Sir, we rudely interrupted you. Continue your chain of thought, and obviously we're talking about pricing and the process in which, you go through to either identify a problem or, again, come up with a solution. Talk to me.
Absolutely. Good morning to Helen Redfield. Thank you for having us on.
Sir.
Good morning to the listening audience.
And a good night as well. You'll be rebroadcast. Anytime you're on, we put you on at night as well.
Okay.
Sweet dreams.
So,
right.
Good evening and a good morning to the DLCA staff and to the listening public. One of the things that we talked about this morning was fuel prices and what we're doing to bring those down. And this has been a lengthy process. What you've seen in the gas stations, the retail gas stations over the past week or two has been a reflection of the work done behind the scenes for many weeks. Our legal division, myself, Office of the Commissioner, we have had extensive conversation with the individual retailers and with the wholesalers that supply the island, both out of Puerto Rico and, of course, here, Lime Tree. One of the discrepancies that was brought to our attention time and time again through the St. Thomas and St. John district was why price is so different in St. Thomas as opposed to St. Croix.
Sure. Right? Different somewhere, right?
Right. The easy answer is, of course, Lime Tree is here in St. Croix.
Sure.
Therefore, the overhead of getting the gas from the wholesaler to the retailer is lower.
Mm-hmm.
But as we had these conversations with the retailers, we recognized that there are many differences, not only in transportation costs. You have overhead. Mm-hmm. Those who own and those who lease have different overhead costs. WAPA is another thing that came up time and time again with our conversations, that hasn't changed for them. Whether gas prices, wholesale gas prices go up or down.
Right.
Also, some of the things to consider is the amount of the employees. There's some gas stations who are owner-operated, and there's some who have 3, 4, 5. One person we talked to said they had 30 employees. Of course, they own several gas stations, but they had several employees, so the overhead is different. Taking that into consideration, because we understand that the retailers provide us a service. We don't want them to go out of business. We want them to continue to provide this service to the people of the Virgin Islands.
Right.
So that conversation shifted where we had to ask them, well, based on your overhead costs, talk to us about the gross profit margin. Because right now, when we compare it to what global oil prices are reflecting, and we know what you're paying for it wholesale, it seems like it's a little extensive.
Well, it's almost like $2.
Right?
Okay.
Exactly.
That's criminal. Okay.
And even more in St. Thomas in some places.
Well, let me dig into St. Thomas again. And again, a lot of these stations, as well as over here, are owned by people in St. Thomas, in Puerto Rico, and firms that have got franchises. Am I correct?
St. Thomas,
No,
St. John.
no, as well as here, you do have a differential. Although they have to sharpen their pen over here, we're talking about they're getting some of the stations are not getting fuel through Lime Tree. Am I correct over here?
No, on the District of St. Croix, the corporate retail outlets are getting their
Every one
fuel
of them.
from Gulf Oil,
Okay.
who is housed at Lime Tree.
Okay.
In the St.
Now-
Thomas, St. John district, you have major brands who actually get their wholesale fuel from their own holding tanks
Right.
in Puerto Rico.
Right.
And this is where I'd like to...
So, but you're talking about the distance of travel. If
Correct.
in fact you were encouraging them to get it, it's a lot shorter span to go from St. Croix again from Lime Tree over there to fuel up these folks. But I think there is an unhealthy relationship over there with reference to the tanks of fuel that are in Puerto Rico.
Right, but one of the things that I wanted to share with you that Director Tricoche and the team discovered is the name-branded retailers in St. Thomas, St. John district, they cannot reduce their prices as quickly as the independent retailers because they have their corporate chain. So I'd like to commend the major brands, the Total and the Puma, who have since reduced their prices since we had the conversation. We're actually pushing them to reduce more, but as the Commissioner of License and Consumer Affairs, I do understand that they have a different chain of processes that they have to go through. So I'm still pushing you, Puma, if you're listening. I'm still pushing you, Total, if you're listening.
Right.
To meet up with the independents who have in the St. Thomas, St. John
I think what
district.
you're saying, you have a
reduce their
perceptual
prices.
issue to these folks. You're talking about to your consumers.
Yes.
In that case, if you have to shave a little bit of the exorbitant profit or spread you have, you better start moving downward. It makes no sense.
Correct.
In other words, sometimes you have to lose to win.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right. Go.
Go ahead, Tricoche.
That's correct. And to add to what the commissioner said, after understanding those costs and then having the one-on-one conversations about what do you really need to stay afloat, right? We don't want them to go to business, as I was saying. We want you to stay afloat. We want you to meet your overhead. We want you to pay your bills.
Sure.
We want you to take care of your families. We want you to do all of these things.
Right.
Because your business is necessary for us. But we don't want you taking advantage of the people of the Virgin Islands.
Right.
And at some point in time, what we've seen is you are taking advantage. Now,
let me ask you. I'm going to interrupt you. You and I are looking eyeball to eyeball. I have a feeling you look eyeball to eyeball with these folks when you're having this conversation, I'm sure. What do? Look back at you and smile? I mean, how can they actually look at you when, in fact, you're drawing a picture of exactly what they're doing and what's happening? I mean, really. It's none of your business, blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
No, honestly, some do. Some hedge.
Yes.
At the end of
You
the
mean
day,
they sputter a little bit?
yes, but at the end of the day, we're armed with the facts that we know what you're getting it for. So despite your hedging or the excuses, we can
Well,
have
you're armed
this
with the
conversation.
information, so you can have a conversation,
Correct.
basically come home to Jesus discussion.
That is what
Right.
that is what we've been doing because
Good
we
for
all
you.
we know this, and we want to have that conversation, and we want to do it amicably. And I say this: we have a friendly conversation, if you want, open and honest. Let's talk about your business. Teach us what we don't know, so to help us to understand what you're going through. Now, upon understanding what you're going through, we still need you to lower your prices.
Sure.
Because we're aware of what global oil prices are.
Correct.
So at some point in time, yes, you are raising your price exorbitantly. And what we're asking for is during COVID-19, during this pandemic, where many people are out of work, or many people are not working the amount of hours that they used to work.
Right.
You need to take care of the community. You live here. You take care of the Virgin Islands. We need you to continue to do so by being stubborn, by not lowering your prices, by continuing to extend your gross profit margin. You're not serving the community.
Sure.
And within the powers within the office of the commissioner, this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but you can do this amicably,
Right.
or we will at some point in time make you do it.
Right.
And Senator Redfield, I think maybe that's what the audience is waiting for, as well as the first branch of government. But in any relationship, it's easier for both parties to come to an amicable agreement than to have a neutral person to make that decision.
Well,
so if the stations are going to require that the Office of the Commissioner determines what that price margin is, we're going to do it. However, I have a conscience, and I know that they have to survive as well as the consumers need to survive. We have to do a balance.
Let me just say, sure you do. But they have been doing this for so long and having this spread. And you know as well as I know, they have peer pressure amongst themselves, which we should care less about.
That's correct.
If they have peer pressure from themselves, that's an unhealthy relationship they have with the industry, meaning they all seem to go up at the same time, come down at the same time, and very little spread. So I think what happens, they choose somebody that can be off a little bit, okay? It's an exception out there at Ziggy's right now out east. He probably is not in that cabal that they have. But my God, you're absolutely correct. I mean, where is the conscience?
And to just change gears real quickly, I want your listening audience to know that this conversation has commenced with your grocery, retail, and wholesale outlets.
Good.
So expect the prices on commodities that we consume on a daily basis for nourishment. You'll start seeing the downward trend when it is applicable.
Sure.
However, as you've heard 3 weeks prior, items such as eggs, where the hens cannot lay eggs quick enough, those items will continue to go up, if not stabilize at a higher rate than we're accustomed to seeing. But as soon as this pandemic fades into the past, which hopefully is sooner than later, those things will also come down. But unfortunately, COVID-19 has affected those commodities. The growers have been social distancing, I mean the people who pick, and so on and so forth. But back to the fuel, but I wanted people to know, because your audience is hungry to find out when we're going to deal with the grocery.
Well,
but Tricoche is grocery also, so you can shoot him with those questions.
Well, with the same thing. I mean, I've got a product out there that there are some of the wholesalers, if you buy in a decent quantity, you can buy wholesale. It's 100% profit. I'm looking at an item that I can take right now here and show you and go to the store, and it's double.
With items like that, if I can ignore the music, if you have an item that you believe is exorbitantly priced, and it's not part of the price freeze currently, submit the information to us, picture,
I'll do it,
contents, price, so we can actually go into the store and physically ask for the invoice from the wholesaler so we can see what the markup is.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back, and I keep rudely interrupting you. Let's keep...
I think it's me, Senator Redfield. I apologize, Director Tricoche.
Oh, well... You're apologizing to him? That's very good. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 92. All right, we are back, and we have the Commissioner of Licensing and Consumer Affairs, but we're not even mentioning his name right now. We're going to go right to Tricoche. We're going to be, you and I are going to behave ourselves. We're going to let the guy that really knows what he's doing be able to speak.
Yes, sir.
Tricoche, you kind of got free reign there, sir. Go right ahead.
All right, excellent. So,
just make sure you get into the mic, yeah.
So we're going to take a shift listening audience and talk about food prices.
Okay.
You know, we've seen a change in fuel prices, and I want to assure you that simply because we've seen a change does not mean that our work here at DLCA is done. This is just the beginning of the work that we're doing, where we can continue to apply pressure to both the wholesalers and the gas retailers to make sure that the price that Virgin Islanders see at the pump is fair. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, for parity and fairness with retail gas prices. But let's shift and let's talk about food. Food prices have long been an issue and has gotten even greater attention with COVID-19. There have been a lot of rumors swirling around inadequate food supply because of the pandemic. I want to assure you that through our federal partners, the United States Department of Agriculture, their data has shown that our domestic production is adequate. There is no shortage of food currently. One of the things that they've looked at is panic shopping and reduction in restaurant traffic. What does that mean for you, the consumer? It means that supply and demand has totally shifted because of the pandemic. It has hit us economically, and at the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, panic shopping occurred. People were running out buying toilet paper, water, different supplies because there's a fear that there's going to be a shortage, hand sanitizers, disinfectant, antibacterial wipes, to name a few. What that caused was a disruption in the supply chain and a disruption in the supply. Most producers and manufacturers, they anticipate a steady increase in demand, not when there is a sudden flux that it was now. And as a result, we saw a shift in prices. Some of the other things to consider is that with the 6 feet of social distancing, many of the factories and the production companies relied on labor. And these laborers were standing next to each other, whether they're sorting eggs, whether they're making widgets. It doesn't matter what they were making. The amount of staff and laborers that they had on hand equated to the amount of production that they were able to put out. With social distancing, for example, if you have half the amount of staff and laborers that you have, that means your production is also going to be cut in half. But because of panic shopping, the demand was more, but yet production was down. As a result, we're seeing this huge shift nationally, and it's trickled down here to the Virgin Islands. Eggs has been a concern. We've received many phone calls about eggs. Eggs have tripled in cost since this has begun. Many of the invoices that the commissioner and myself have requested and have looked at has reflected that the wholesalers and distributors that are supplying the major retailers here in the Virgin Islands have charged them even more than triple. So while the egg prices are high, I can safely tell you it could be a lot higher were they not to shave off some of their profit margin.
Yeah.
We're not excusing that eggs are high, and we understand the impact in everyone's pockets because we're consumers as well.
Sure.
But that is a national issue. Now, the good news is, as the supply and demand begins to level out, you're going to begin to see a reduction in those prices.
Yeah.
Right? And that leads me to price gouging. When a store has unreasonably, as in the example that you gave, Senator Redfield, raise their prices, especially in items that should be frozen during an emergency price freeze without cause,
right?
Which means the cost to them didn't go up.
Sure.
They're simply taking advantage of the situation.
Absolutely. Right.
Then we have a case for price gouging.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
Whenever we get those reports, we have to investigate, and we request the invoice so that the retailer can prove that they have paid more for what they're selling, and as a result, the price has gone up.
Let me just interrupt you quickly. Again, the governor has the authority. Again, you right now are working for the virus-related items, but this virus has spread to, as you have noted, right to regular food that normally is not in that provision. He could actually expand that authority under his emergency authority and broaden that situation. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct, Senator.
Yes, he could. And
you are correct.
What I am saying, I would recommend after you get your ducks lined up, and obviously Tricoche is looking at these numbers, go over there and sit down with the governor and say, Governor, let's expand this because this is going to continue. Somehow these guys got to be put in check, and know that you have the incisors big enough to take a chunk out of their neck if you need to.
And hence the current conversations that we are engaging in with the groceries and the wholesalers, similar to what we did with the fuel retailers, is give us the facts so we can make the determination.
Right.
So you are correct, but as the public should know the existing price freeze are only for those
I
items
understand,
that
but
contain
if you
the
ask
spread.
him,
However,
armed with the information, I guarantee. Look, I can't guarantee it. I know that he has spoken out on this issue himself, and if he realizes again through you and the Attorney General and everything, broaden this thing out, and it's an attention getter. All right, continue, sir.
And you raise a good point, sir. In the meantime, though,
Yeah, I understand.
those individuals out there listening, public, if you suspect price gouging, please write in, call into DLCA,
Right.
let us know, email us, let us know, and we are investigating.
Right.
We're investigating actively, and we're doing this every week ever
Right.
since the emergency declaration.
Right.
My team has been in the field. I have been in the field,
Sure.
and we're actively doing this even on the weekend.
and we have the hotlines that are set up for the District of St. Croix. The number
Right.
is 340-727-SCAM, SCAM.
Right.
So that's 340-727-7226. In the District of St. Thomas, St. John, including Water Island, the number is 340-771-SCAM. That's 340-771-7226. And our email address is consumerawareness@dlca.vi.gov. And Director Tricoche and his team will get on it. If you know our personal emails, submit it to us so we can investigate. Because one of the things I want to continue to stress and underscore is, to the listening public and to anyone who picks this up after it is live, is if you see something, say something. Report it to us. If you just blah, blah, blah on social media, we don't get the actual report to act on it, and nor do we have your contact information to say, hey, Senator Redfield, we checked on the bottle of oil that you complained about. Guess what? They raised it 1,000%, and we're dealing with it, and they've been fined.
I think for the listener to focus on this, what Tricoche was talking about and what you're talking about arms you, which we agree, that you could, in fact, go to the governor and ask him to expand the executive order to include food. That very information you're asking about right now and you're investigating is what you will sit down with the governor and document exactly what's going on to arm him with the ability to make a decision for or against. But
That's correct.
right.
And one of the things that we are doing is we're looking and examining what other states do when there is a declaration of emergency.
Sure.
And what the powers are as relates to the consumer. So I'm going to be the first to admit, I think our powers currently are not as strong as they should be.
Sure. Right.
So I'm looking forward to strengthening them.
Right.
In collaboration with the legislature and the Office of the Governor to ensure that the consumers are better protected when the next state of emergency is declared.
That's correct, and you guys clearly understand we're approaching June 1, and we're going into hurricane season, and you're right back to where you are. This particular issue with the virus is not covered like it is in a hurricane, and the governor ought to, again, strongly consider, along with the Attorney General and everything, to broaden that power, because leaving you there absolutely, other than embarrassing somebody, you got to do more than embarrass them. You got to really be able to find
Correct.
All right, let's go. Continue, Tricoche.
And,
I'm sorry, we really
Not at all.
killing
And
you.
Finally, I want to say that we're doing the same thing that we did with the fuel retailers.
Yeah.
We're meeting with our food retailers.
Mhm.
We're speaking with our wholesalers. We're setting up those meetings. We're having those, again, honest and open discussions
Yeah.
where we can do this amicably, but we are also prepared, if those don't go well,
Yeah.
to go ahead and within the rights that we have with the Office of the Commissioner to approach this from a legal standpoint. We don't want to do that because everyone lives here, and we understand that our retailers are also consumers,
Sure.
right?
Right.
They also have to shop. The owners also have to shop, and so are wholesalers. So as consumer affairs,
Right.
we want to treat everybody as a consumer.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we also want to protect the public,
Right.
and we're going to do so by any means necessary.
Sure.
So for those retailers and wholesalers that are listening, if we have not spoken with you yet, be prepared to have that conversation and be prepared to make some changes to the way that you're currently doing business, because we're going to follow up on it.
Well, you're being as polite and as professional as I expect you folks to be, but I think the underlying point is that you reach a limit where, again, if the balance is consistently against the consumer, and particularly in a time which we are all under tremendous pressure, and we're at a disadvantage, you certainly don't want to take advantage of that disadvantage. And again, as a media talk show host and stuff, I am prepared to work with your department to do as much as I can to embarrass these people publicly. And if I have to make announcements here for free and give them free advertising, I'm going to do it.
And we truly appreciate that, because at the end, the magic word is balance.
Right.
We at the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs wants to ensure that there's a fair profit,
right,
but there's also a fair price to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, if we can all live in this small community together, everyone eats, everyone is successful, then we'll have a better place to be.
Well, not only that, I'm willing to give them equal time. As far as I'm concerned, they can come on here and let me ask them some questions.
As we have those conversations,
right, you can be a co-host at that point.
Excellent.
You can ask them questions, and they can come in and come clean, and they got nothing to hide. So why not come in here and justify these high prices? I'm only being fair.
Excellent. As a matter of fact, our first Facebook Live, we'll invite them to our show,
Absolutely.
And then we can lend them to you.
Absolutely. I'll give them some therapy.
But can I give you some good news
yes,
first?
Yes, give us some good news.
So, to the business community who is either paying attention to us or will do so later.
Yeah.
The Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs, when I first got here, it was going to be a month, April 8th, so it's already, a year. Licensing was actually a big issue, a major issue, so I focused most of my attention on that.
Right.
People were screaming, it takes so long to get a business license, I need to get my bank accounts. So in response to your cry, we've been working on what is called a general license.
Okay.
Some persons thought it was taking too long, so they went ahead and did certain things. But the real crux of the matter is, what can we provide to someone who wants to be an entrepreneur in the Virgin Islands to
Sure.
get them out of the door quickly?
Correct.
Now, we've created what's called a general business license. It's $200 plus the application fee. And what this enables you to do is, once you've registered your documents with the Lieutenant Governor's office, certified your trade name,
Yeah.
and received a police background check, which occurs within 24 to 48 hours in a normal operating
Sure.
environment outside of COVID-19,
Yeah.
you will get this license that allows you to do transactional work. So you can get a business, you can get a bank, open a bank account, you can purchase personal or real property, you can enter into lease agreements, you can import equipment, you can register motor vehicles. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the general business license. This will solve your problems. Also, I haven't said it, the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs Division of Licensing is now completely working remotely.
Wow.
We're working the kinks out if you submit a check and you cannot pay by credit card. But what's going to happen is you're more likely than not going to mail this check, and we're going to go ahead and process it. But if you can do everything by credit card, you can actually now upload your supporting documents. We get it into our queue, and each licensing officer is currently working at home remotely, processing your work, not only renewing licenses, but also working on brand new licenses. I want to thank the licensing team, the consumer affairs team that Tricoche oversees.
Sure.
The work that allows them to work remotely, they're doing so, fielding complaints,
Sure.
doing the investigation, but you still have persons on the team that are monitoring prices for the fuel pumps. But most importantly, the business license
Sure.
that can be issued within 24 hours, as long as you have the required registry materials registered at the Lieutenant Governor's office, can be issued in 24 hours, Senator
Wow, that's
Redfield,
incredible.
which is record. It's called
Sure.
a general business license. Now, when you actually know what specific business you'll be operating,
Sure.
then you come back to us and apply for that license.
Gotcha.
Because that's when you know your location and you get your zoning. But the general business license is not for professional occupations that require a specific license. It's for the actual business,
Right.
general business license.
Sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, within the next couple of days, our online site should be able to accept your request for that general business license.
Good.
I just signed it into effect last week Friday, but I just wanted to share with you. I can't lie to you and tell you this is breaking news on your station. I did it yesterday, but you're pretty close enough. 24 hours. We'll be issuing a press release to that effect, but I'm happy to thank the team that was able to get this done for the community that's been clamoring that.
Good.
I can't even get my business account open at the bank. I can't even get a post office key. The general business license is here for you to do transactional work. You can't actually open to the public to serve them until you get that real business license.
Well, I can see the
thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, and I didn't know there were other radio talk shows, are there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there are. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I didn't even know that. But in any event, yeah, I think I heard you. I think you were on 1620.
Yes.
That's good.
And 1340. Yes.
Good. Very good. And you got to keep spreading spread your word around because you can't overdo it. And again, we talked a little bit about using the facilities that government has to have one of these workshops, which I would be happy to assist you with. And if we do get one of these brave merchants who is gouging to come on.
Allegedly gouging. Well, we haven't proved it yet.
Well, rest assured we'll prove it. In any event, I want to thank the two of you for being here again. It's
thank you, Senator
refreshing to have transparency. And Tricoche, we kept cutting you off, and you have a sober, easygoing. Well, what is it? Talk softly and carry a big stick?
Senator Redfield, the next time I'll allow Tricoche to come here by himself.
Really good. I would like him here by himself.
That's fine.
All right, let's go, guys. Remember, tomorrow, let me see what we're doing tomorrow. We've got, oh, Lord, who do we have? Carton Dow coming on, and Raymond Williams is coming on from the lottery office, so we'll be keeping you busy tomorrow. So God bless each and every one of you. God bless the United States Virgin Islands. Remember, we're going to have a short pause here. Then we'll be covering the governor's press conference. We'll be back, and we'll be transmitting that on a couple of radio stations. We'll be simulcasting. So we'll see you in a few minutes. You've been on Caribbean Country 93.5. We'll see you in a few.